wanted you to see the layout of this. So that you can now not be stressed at these are the questions that they're going to ask you. I thought the notes out there for you to make notes on. I took the big one away because it was going over the...
It was a little too big, yeah, I saw that. All right. Are we up here right now? No. Is it starting already? Oh my God, we got 3 minutes. All right. How you doing? Good to see you. Thanks, well. Haven't we done this before?
A little bit ago. I don't know about you, but I'm not going to bother standing because that's like in my belly button.
Well, that's not, no, they're good. They have good pickup.
Do it?
They pick up pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Lido, everybody. My name is Colleen Brown. This evening, we're honored to host the candidates for the upcoming BC provincial election here in Fort St. John. The North Peace BC All Candidates Forum provides an excellent opportunity for the community to engage directly with those who are seeking to represent us in our provincial legislature. Your presence here today, both in the room but also online via live stream, shows a commitment to understanding the issues that matter most to those of us who live in the region. As we gather to discuss the future of our province, Let's foster a spirit of open dialogue and mutual respect. Today's conversations will give each of us the chance to hear, hopefully, diverse perspectives, ask important questions, and ensure that our voices are heard in this important democratic process. So let's make this a productive and insightful meeting. This evening, Curtis Whitford will be our moderator. Born and raised in Fort St. John, he's been in the oil and gas industry for 34 years, and for the past 7 years has been the Northeast BC Health, Safety and Environment Field Officer for Tourmaline. Curtis is also the current president of the Fort St. John Petroleum Association, which is the organization that is presenting this evening's forum. Before Curtis begins with the rules of engagement, both rules of engagement for us as well as for the candidates, and before I invite you all to rise for our national anthem, I would like to take a moment and recognize and acknowledge that we are in the Treaty 8 territory and on traditional territories of the Daneza people. Now, if you would please rise with me for the singing of O Canada.
Strong and free, from far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
I have this. First of all, I wanted to acknowledge the fact that Brian and I had a quick conversation yesterday over attendance, and it's actually surprised me a bit. He filled the place, and I said, there's no way. So thank you. Thank you for coming tonight. This is important for our area. And I want you guys to know, on behalf of the Fort St. John Petroleum Association, we see the total need in having this conversation and allowing this opportunity, and we're super happy to provide this for our community and our residents. So thank you guys for coming. So before we get into the rules of engagement, you can understand that we both have Dan and Jordan here. There is a third candidate. They were invited. We had no response. And that gentleman is Mr. Ian McMahon. Chose not to be here. That's with the NDP. So I want you guys to know, thank you, Dan and Jordan, for showing up tonight. We're going to do our best to make sure that you have equal opportunity. So in regards to responses. So rules of engagement. Let's make this clear, not only to our two candidates, but for our crowd as well. The candidates will introduce themselves, and they have 3 minutes to complete their introduction. When asked a question, each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond. We'll be alternating equally who gets to respond first to each question. After the response, each candidate will have the opportunity to provide a 1-minute rebuttal to each question. For the crowd, that's you guys. This is where I need your help. We'll allow 1 minute, and it's going to be up on the big screen, to ask your question, and we'll be monitoring this time. And if need be, we'll remove or shut off the microphone. We have two gentlemen here tonight that's going to walk around tonight and make sure that you guys have that opportunity to ask the question. And we're going to be, and I'll just throw it here, our goal tonight is to provide fair and equal opportunity for each candidate to respond to the questions, and we'll be respectful to the process and to the candidates that are willing to attend this forum. So Dan and Jordan, thank you. So just before we started, we actually flipped a coin. And to flip the coin in regards to who goes first in regards to the introduction, but also go who's first on who closes. So Jordan, you won that toss. Are you ready to introduce yourself?
Point of clarification, please.
Sure.
Was it 3 minutes or 5 minutes for the opening and closing?
I was told 3.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, I'll speed it up.
Okay. and don't get me wrong, that's the reason Colleen's here, is to keep me in line. So,
Okay.
3.
That sounds good.
Okay. Are you guys ready to be introduced? Jordan, you're first.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
that sounds good.
You bet.
Okay, thank you very much for having me. My name is Jordan Kealy. I'm not going to bother standing because I can't talk out of my belly button. I just want to let you know that I am the one and only candidate for the Conservative Party of BC, and I have been for the past year. I have traveled around this region, and we've held over 20 events and town halls to be able to talk to communities and answer questions. I'm originally from the Lower Mainland. I grew up in Langley on a small farm, and then I moved up here over 20 years ago to be able to pursue my apprenticeship as a millwright. And I've worked in various different industries all around this region and over into Alberta. And it's given me an appreciation of the ability to thrive and afford to be able to have a living. And it made it so then I could buy a farm. And when I met my wife, we've had the farm since 2008. And I love having the farm and the freedom and the difference between down in the Lower Mainland, the mentality of the people, it's different. And when I moved up here, people would literally give you the shirt off their back if you needed it. And I love that appreciation and what people would do. And it really made me feel at home. And I don't plan on going anywhere. I got into politics personally because in the healthcare system, I lost my dad 2 years ago. And because of that, I was kind of at a loss. I didn't really know what to do. I didn't like the way it happened, and I had to find a different way to approach what to do. So I decided I had the opportunity to put my name in for local politics, and I got voted in as the area B director on the PRD. And it opened my eyes, and it was a steep learning curve, but it was a great learning experience, being able to work with the other mayors, councillors, and be involved in the communities and sit on several boards and associations, and work intimately with all of the communities and know a lot of the concerns. It's no surprise that the NDP aren't here. They're just kind of invisible. They pretty much don't acknowledge this region in most cases when we have issues. And when we try and advocate to the province, we've had a lot of issues trying to get the support for the rural regions of British Columbia. And I think that's one of the most amazing things about our party is that with John Rustad as the leader and possible premier, he can be the first premier of British Columbia from the north. And I want to stress that he can be a premier that actually understands the rural regions as well as the city and the balance of how that can work. So some of the main things that I've learned about this region as I go around and see the different things affecting us, the key concerns that we face are affordability, healthcare, crime and drugs, and supporting our resource industry. And we'll be more involved when it comes to the discussions on this, and I really look forward to the questions and concerns that people have that they want to express. Jordan? And I look forward to being engaged, and I'm always willing to answer my phone. I think that's one thing that every person will acknowledge, that I am always there to listen. Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan. I want to remind both Dan and Jordan, we have the red light in the middle table. That's going to give you a 15-second warning of when you need to close and wrap it up. I apologize. Pardon me?
Not a tanning light.
Not a tanning light. I apologize. But just to be clear for both you gentlemen, the red light comes on, you have 15 seconds to wrap it up in regards to that response.
Okay.
Thank you. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks, Brian, and to the Petroleum Association for putting on tonight. This is really important as part of the democratic process to engage and be able to engage the public like this. It's great to see so many familiar faces out here tonight, as well as a number of new ones that are really obviously concerned about the future of Fort St. John. My name is Dan Davies. I'm your independent Conservative candidate. And really important to decipher, my opponent is the Conservative Party of British Columbia's candidate. So it is really important, I think, that people understand who I am, the values that I hold as a Conservative running in this upcoming election. Those are my ideologies. I didn't just walk into politics here in Fort St. John. I grew up here. I've worked here my whole life, and I've raised my family here. 12 years on City Council, 7 years as the MLA, sitting on multiple regional boards. I have a deep understanding of the issues, the things that people have taught me about this riding, and those are the things that you can imagine around healthcare, infrastructure, the way that we need to make our life better. My leadership is rooted in service. I'm a major in the Canadian Armed Forces. I've worked with the cadet program, the former vice president of the Legion, former chair of the Restorative Justice Society, and many others. Leadership just isn't about politics. It's often about the community relationships, learning from each other, rolling up our sleeves to get the work done. My advocacy that I've done over the last 7 years has led to many real outcomes, like working toward the nurse training program that is offered here in Fort St. John, ending the clawbacks that many of our families who have children with autism that the government was going to do, working with the seniors to stop the provincial retinal program, saving the eyesight of thousands of seniors. Steady leadership matters in this election. And I believe that with hard work and personal responsibility and standing up for everyday families is the values that I bring forward. It's also important that I think people understand fiscal responsibility is critically important. So is small government, as well as getting free enterprise and promoting entrepreneurship to build our economy. I've worked many years in the oil and gas industry. I'm a truck driver. I've taught many of your children in the school system. I know what it means to earn a living as well. I also understand the challenges that we face here in the North that comes with working here in the North. These businesses in industry is the backbone of our economy. It's the backbone of British Columbia's economy, and we need to be recognized for that. Some of you might wonder what it means to run in a party with without a party, and I believe my record speaks for itself. I've spent years building relationships, understanding the system. And those skills don't just disappear because I'm running as an independent. Running without a party allows me to do what's best for British Columbians, what's best for this riding. I don't have to worry about all the votes that are going to Vancouver. We just had to watch the debate last night on TV and see David Eby and John Rustad solely focused again on the issues in Vancouver. I can focus on you, the people of the North Peace, and make sure that those issues are brought forward into the legislature.
Dan, your time's up.
Thanks very much. I appreciate it, and we'll look forward to the questions.
Thank you, Dan. So as far as how we're going to proceed tonight, we have a series of questions that were both submitted via email and developed within the group that helped organize this event. So I'm going to throw these questions at both Dan and Jordan in regards to who goes first and who responds second. But they're random questions, and don't get me wrong, out of these series of questions, we gave them less than half of these questions to provide responses in regards to prepared responses. So where I'm going with that, you won't know when they're coming. Okay, are you guys ready? Dan, believe it or not, you're going to go first on this one. Okay, as far as healthcare goes, with all the communities in Peace River North experiencing challenges such as physician shortages, limited mental health services, unpredictable ER closures, and long wait times for the specialist care, how do you plan to address these specific healthcare concerns and ensure residents have timely access to quality medical services, including in rural and Indigenous communities?
Well, you know, this has been obviously the number one issue that I've faced in my office is healthcare, and I probably imagine most people out here is concerned about healthcare. One of my platform points in my card that's on the table tonight is fix Northern Health, and it's not as easy as just saying that. For almost 5 years now, I've been calling on an independent audit for Northern Health, and it's not to play gotcha, but it's to find out what's going well and what isn't going well. I really believe that we need to, if you've been up here for a while, you remember we used to have the hospital boards. I believe that we also need to bring back that responsibility and give voice to local communities so that they can have a voice in our health authorities. We also need to be holding Northern Health responsible. There seems to be no accountability when it comes to Northern Health. And I've seen that firsthand as the MLA that's trying to push forward issues from constituents that are struggling to stick-handle their way through the healthcare system. You know, Alberta has a similar size healthcare system to British Columbia. They have 16 vice presidents paid in the area of $400,000 a year. British Columbia, with a slightly larger one, has almost 70 vice presidents managing a similar healthcare system. We need to start cutting the waste and putting that money on the front lines, hiring more doctors, hiring more nurses. It's looking at how do we look at people that are foreign trained and bring them into the fold. They shouldn't, you know, a doctor who's trained in another country probably shouldn't be driving a taxi cab. How can we bring them into the fold and have them part of our healthcare system so that we can start delivering results to the patient? And I think this is key. The government has forgot that the patient needs to be at the center of our healthcare system. Put that back in, put the patient back in the center and start building our system up from there.
Thank you, Dan. Jordan, you ready? Okay.
Thank you very much. We need to put patients first, and I want to highlight that some of the things that might be mentioned, it's like my platform is getting repeated back at me when I've been talking about these items for the past year and what our party is looking to try and fix. And right now, it's as my opponent, Dan Davies, has mentioned, that our healthcare system is broken. It's been broken for more than 20 years. We've had shortages of a lot of healthcare professionals, and we need to look at training and retaining our own locals. And right now we see local government working and partnering with Northern Health and trying to work at producing our own healthcare workers that are interested in staying local. As well as when you look at the health authorities and how they're bloated they are, and they were originally amalgamated from regional health authorities, which were more accountable and transparent to the local regions that they represented. When they got amalgamated together, now they've become so bloated that there's a lot of red tape and bureaucracy that needs to be cut out. And we need to focus on our frontline healthcare workers and really bolstering those healthcare workers. A lot of issues that we have in Fort St. John when we see the ER closures, the doctors that are having problems here, it primarily goes back to not having support with needing extra nurses as well. And we really need to bring in as many nurses as possible and train other healthcare workers through our allied program that we're pursuing right now with our local institutes. The other things that we need to look at is trying to bring in a privatized system to alleviate the pressures off of our frontline healthcare workers. And it's not private like you'd experience in the US. It's private to be able to alleviate the healthcare wait lists.
Jordan?
Thank you.
Okay, so this is where it gets fun. We're going to allow them 1 minute each for a rebuttal. Dan, you got 1 minute.
Yeah, well, certainly thanks. And I am going to point out, probably many things do sound very similar, because when Kevin Falcon folded the BC United Party, a lot of stuff was handed over, including the BC United platform. So I will say there's probably going to be a lot of similarities in regards to the platform. Going back to training local, I 100% believe in that. I fully, and I'm so proud that we have an institution like Northern Lights College, the UNBC campus here in Fort St. John, which is critical for training people and keeping people locally. That's why I was so proud to be working with the City Council here in Fort St. John and throughout the region, bringing the nurse training program to Fort St. John. And I'm so happy to, the first graduating class of nurses came out this year. Most of them have stayed local. So absolutely also agree on training local. But what else can we do here? What other health professions can we bring to our institution and train people up locally?
Jordan?
So when it came to BC United collapsing, that was pretty much their own demise as to why that happened. I'm not going to get into that, but my party made it very clear that they picked the best regions or best candidates to represent the regions. And we didn't take anything else. It wasn't a coalition or alliance. Our party is our own. We're not affiliated with any others. We strive to ensure that we are representing our constituents in the best way going forward. And right now, when it comes to healthcare, that is providing the professionals in any way we possibly can to alleviate the ER closures, and then doing an audit, an external audit of every system to figure out the flaws and work to improve our system so that it's not lacking in the ways that it has been for over 10 years. And we've known that this has been a mess in the making since the baby boomers. And we need to prepare for this strategically going forward. And I believe that my party can do that in the best manner possible as a party and a team to be able to tackle those challenges in an expedited manner.
Jordan, thank you. So I want to be a reminder to both of you guys that 15 seconds is important. Let's wrap it up. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I'm getting the glare, and I don't want that all night. Sorry, Colleen. You knew that was coming. Okay, let's go on to housing and affordability. With the growing presence of unhoused encampments in Fort St. John and surrounding areas, what immediate and long-term measures will you take to address the homelessness and ensure public safety and provide sustainable housing solutions for vulnerable populations? Jordan, you're going to go first this time.
Do I have a choice?
Yeah, you do.
Oh,
yes or no?
I'll go second.
You want to go second?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, well, that's a really good question when we're talking about something that is probably on the minds of everybody here. We've seen a lot of it in our media, on social media, about the homelessness issue. But this isn't just about homelessness. This is about mental health. This is about addictions. We need to go back to the cause, what is making this the issue. And a lot of that is, dealing with trauma that people deal with. In Fort St. John, if you are trying to get out of addiction, there's no detox here at all. It's in Prince George. There's no long-term recovery. We've just got a small shelter or a small recovery center that's opened, but there's no supports here for people to get better. We need to make sure that we have good education, good prevention, the whole middle piece of getting people well and into recovery so that they can become contributing people into society again. And I think that is a huge thing. The other piece is the government also, the provincial government, also needs to unshackle local governments and give them and empower them so that they can start making rules that work for the municipalities when it comes to homelessness and housing. But I think if we can start with getting at the root problem, I think we can make a huge impact on that housing that we're seeing. The other part is around crime. And the light went off, I don't know. It's been on the whole time, so I'm not sure.
That was your cue. Dan?
So basically, we need to be dealing with drugs and violence, giving police the tools that they need, and working with our justice system to make sure that there are people held accountable when it comes to crime and disorder.
Thanks, Dan. Jordan?
Can you please repeat the question?
Absolutely. With the growing presence of unhoused encampments in Fort St. John and surrounding areas, what immediate and long-term measures will you take to address the homelessness, to ensure public safety, and provide sustainable housing solutions for vulnerable populations?
So the Conservative Party BC and myself, we recognize the fact that when it comes to our largest thing that we're tackling is affordability and inflation. That the people that are on the streets, they're not necessarily just dealing with mental health issues or addictions. That some of them you just can't afford to live anymore. And we need to alleviate the cost of living, as well as also approaching our homelessness and drugs and mental health issues. We need to start providing the treatments that they deserve. That we can't just leave them out on their own, especially in regions like this with how cold it gets during the winter times. So our party is committed to looking at treatment facilities and being able to offer the people the help that they need to be able to get past the addictions that they have and the treatments that they need for the mental health issues that we all know people that are facing issues when it comes to COVID and the stresses that it's put on our lives. We are committed to working with getting rid of the hardcore drugs off of our streets and focusing on getting people through the treatment so that way when they get out, they aren't bombarded with a smorgasbord of hardcore drugs again. And it's a revolving door in this system. And we have to allow people a gateway to be able to get back to a normal life and to be able to contribute to society again. So those are some of the things that we're going to tackle. We're also going to try and work on making housing more affordable again and alleviating the inflation that we're seeing on everyday products that makes it harder for us to be able to live in the manner that we'd like to, in the way that we used to. These are some of the key things that we'll do to try and work with municipalities as well and partner with them as to how we might approach that scenario for what best works for their area as well. I truly believe that we can help people in need, and we are more than willing to try and make that happen going forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Jordan. So we have each a minute now, Dan.
Well, I'm probably not going to take a minute, but I do want to also, just to agree. I completely agree that if our economy is working well, we have a robust economy, our businesses are thriving, that means our communities will be thriving. If people have a good paycheck, they're also able to look after themselves, look after their family. But again, I do go back to that is not the only reason. There are other things that our government has failed on. And again, that is basically right from the prevention to the recovery at the end of dealing with people. We got to fix that as well. We need to get our economy up and going, or none of this is going to happen if we don't have a good economy, good paychecks, and revenue going to the government.
Jordan?
I'll also focus on we're focused on cracking down on crime and open drug use. That's not something that we want to have on our streets in an open manner. It's something that we do not want to have that exposure to children in the area as well, and any paraphernalia that they might be exposed to. We're focused on cleaning up our streets as well, on restoring safety to public spaces, ensuring that families can enjoy their communities without fear of exposure to those dangerous paraphernalia. We're also looking at compassionate intervention legislation as well, to introduce laws to allow involuntary treatment for those at serious risk due to addiction, including youth and adults, to keep the most vulnerable safe. Sometimes when we're exposed to certain products, we don't always know what is best for us, and that might actually be a scenario where it could work better for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan. So you know what? I think you brought up a good point here in regards to choice. Let's do this all night, and I'll give you guys first choice, but we're going to go back and forth equally. Dan, you got first choice on the next response in regarding first or second. Job creation and economy. With the closure of the Canfor sawmill significantly impacting jobs in the local economy, and the company still holding valuable forest tenures in the region, how do you plan to support displaced workers, ensure responsible forest management, and address the potential for these tenures to be used for the benefit of the community? Dan, first choice.
Yeah, thanks. And certainly I appreciate the question, and it's front of mind for everybody now, and it's actually one of my platform points, is making sure that the Fort St. John Canfor, or whatever it becomes, the sawmill stays here in Fort St. John, keeping people employed. But it's not just saying that. We do have a bid. There is a bid on the table, and we're hoping that that does come to fruition. But we need to be looking at how we do forest policy, and it needs to be done different than it's been done in the past. And when I say in the past, certainly the last number of years, I really do believe that we need to go back into where it was in the 90s, a similar program that was then. It was the appurtency. And if you're around in the forest industry then, that was where your local fiber supply was attached to the communities. The communities own that. And when that was taken away, we've seen what's happened. We've seen communities like Fort Nelson that has been struggling because all the logs were it was shut down. It was easier and cheaper to haul the logs to the larger centers, whether it was down here or now in our case, Prince George. That does not build communities. That does not build and support rural BC. So we need to be looking at a balance between how we can attach that fiber to the communities, so we don't have the Burns Lakes who solely rely on forestry, or the Houstons that solely rely on forestry. The bad forest policy that we've seen over the last number of years is killing rural BC. We need to, again, bring this back. I'm fully focused on working with industry, working with government, working to move forward on how we can get forest licenses in these tenures brought forward. And again, that's part of experienced leadership, is making sure the connections and relationships are done, working with our First Nations partners, working with everybody across the board to bring this home. And that is exactly what I commit to keep doing.
Thank you, Dan. Jordan?
So this one's near and dear to my heart. I'm a millwright by trade. I've worked in a lot of the different industries around this region. I've seen a lot of them close. Our rural communities are built off of the backbone of our resource industry. And our party is committed to try and bolster our resource industries in a sustainable manner. And I believe that we can do it in an environmentally friendly way. We can look at enhanced biodiversity, modernizing the stumpage rates, which made it so then the current government just kept on increasing and increasing the stumpage rates, and it just made another difficult challenge for these corporations or companies to be able to try and get around and be able to prosper and create these jobs. And we're seeing that right now with our sawmill in Fort St. John, and we see it in other communities on top of that. So we want to look at the permitting process, and we want to be able to expedite our permitting process to be able to make it so then these mills can get the fiber that they need. We can look at the landscape management as well, and how we can partner with communities and work forward to be able to make sure that those permits happen in a faster manner, as well as if we harvest these resources sustainably, we can actually work with wildfire management, which we've been experiencing in a major way the past couple of years. And it's hard to be around that. We see fires and emergencies all around our communities. And I truly believe that if we harvest our forestry in a sustainable manner, we can prevent a lot of that from happening. Our plan will provide local people and communities with the training and equipment that they need to be able to move forward and hopefully never have to go through this transition of seeing the mills closing over and over. We want to see the primary products created, but then we also want to focus on secondary products and work with value-added products to be able to make it so then we're not just relying on logs getting hauled away from our communities.
Thank you, Jordan.
Thanks.
So we got 1 minute each on a rebuttal, Dan. Are you ready?
Yeah, well, thanks, and of course, a lot of this I do agree with, and forest management we've seen over the last number of years has failed in this province. Communities have been asking for prescribed burns. Many of you might know Sonia Laverkas, who works up in Fort Nelson. I've been working with her and trying to bring a plan forward to government to start managing our forests for sustainability. So we have a forest industry down the road. We just need to look at other parts of the world. Sweden has an unbelievable forest industry on a much smaller landscape than we have here in just British Columbia, but they produce more. How can we learn best practices from around the world and bring those back to British Columbia? We need to do things differently. Forest practices in this province have not changed in 50 years, but our forests have changed.
Thank you, Dan. Jordan?
When it comes to our resource industry, our party is committed to focusing on our BC should be a powerhouse. Same with Canada. We have every resource we need to be able to be one of the most prosperous countries and province in the world. I truly believe we need to focus on our infrastructure and look at the different sectors that we can improve upon. And it really is right that it has been mismanaged in the past. And I believe that there is a way going forward in the future, and our party has the experience to be able to tackle that. Our party leader, John Rustad, has worked intimately in a lot of these different sectors in the government to be able to try and move forward and look at options where you can have one project, one permit, to be able to expedite the moving all of our resource sectors forward. And BC forest sector is known as one of the highest cost jurisdictions in North America, and we can change that, and I believe my party can make that happen.
Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you.
So this is a two-part question, and don't get me wrong, we're going to get the first one, and then part A will be second. But Jordan, you get choice here. You want to go first? And in regards to wildfire and water resources.
I'll go first.
You go first. That's great. Okay. Given the increasing threat of wildfires in British Columbia, including the Fort St. John area, what are your plans to enhance wildfire prevention, improve emergency response, support recovery efforts for affected communities, while addressing broader issues of climate change that exacerbates these risks?
You know, I saw this in a very intimate way as the Area B director, that a lot of my area was on fire. And when we pursued and advocated and tried to work with the provincial government at bringing back, allowing locals to have the training and use the equipment in the ways needed, that we know how to fight fires, especially that we see the fires all around us, and our communities bolster and rally to try and deal with these in different scenarios. And we need to work with BC Wildfire, that we've seen them take a different approach in the past year, and it's helped, but we need to work on tackling these fires during the wintertime when it's more manageable. And then we also have to look at harvesting our forestry in a sustainable manner and actually farming our forests in a sustainable manner. There's no reason that we can't do that. And I think we have to go back to that manner and looking at the tenures that are allocated and who can harvest in a more proactive manner that's environmentally friendly, that can make it so then these fires don't transition in the way that they are and burning out of control.
Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you.
Dan?
I mean, anybody who lives certainly in Fort Nelson this year understands the challenges around forest fires. You know, we were quite lucky that the forest fire season here started pretty serious, but overall we didn't have a horrible summer for many of us. We do need to improve how we fight wildfires in BC. Again, I talk about the forest practices being old. Our forest firefighting practice through BC Wildfire is also old technology. We're still fighting fires like we did in the 1950s and 1960s. The technology has changed, and we need to be looking at using this newer technology, mass water systems, getting them rolled out. I've worked with Jeff Kealy with Safeguard, built relationships with him, brought him to government. Government has implemented some, but we are still not seeing these mass water systems roll out. As I did in the last question, forest management practices. We need to be doing prescribed burns. We need to be working, with our partners in the region to look at how do we properly manage our forests so that we're not always not dealing with the forest fire issues. And part of that is looking at harvesting. We just need to look up in the far northeast of British Columbia, millions of hectares of untouched wilderness. We need to be looking at how do we clean and keep that area cleaned up. Part of that is using that for timber, and the other part is also preventing wildfires in British Columbia and in the north.
Thank you, Dan. We got 1 minute. Jordan, are you ready? Yep.
I think it is a great example of how much timber is just going to waste, because the longer they leave it, we won't be able to harvest it. And that's timber that could be keeping our mills and OSB plants going and our pellet plants going, and it could be providing jobs. But having to wait on permits is something that our party is going to expedite and make those happen quicker. And we're also going to make it so then when you see how much forest is burning, that's billions and billions of dollars that's burning. That is revenue that we could have contribute to our economy and make it so then we're not getting taxed into poverty. Just last year alone, the province spent $2 billion fighting fires. We need to work at making this a better practice going forward with our forestry management. And then also when it comes to the movement and support of people that are getting evacuated, being able to help our local governments transition and supply people with the care that they need. Myself alone, that when Fort Nelson got evacuated, I had a family on my property that I let them park a holiday trailer there because it was so difficult that people were having to travel all the way to Prince George from Fort Nelson to try and find a hotel.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Dan, you got a minute.
Yeah, really quickly, again, when Fort Nelson was evacuated, I was working at the front desk at the reception center receiving people from Fort Nelson that came in. And it was the number one thing that I heard. It was really hard to go through the system and get the benefits that you're entitled to. We do need to streamline how people get the help that they need at a time of crisis. We've heard this not only here up in Fort Nelson, but we've heard this across the province where people can't get the help that they need at the time when they need it the most. So that is absolutely something that I'm committed to working with Emergency Management BC in getting those things moved forward so that people aren't struggling at a time of need.
Thank you, Dan.
We've all been hearing a lot about is balancing economic development with the environment, balancing economic development with farmers, balancing economic development with First Nations, and the list goes on and on. British Columbia does resource extraction better than any country, any region in the world. There's no other country that has the strict environmental policies that we have here in British Columbia. There's the high-paying jobs, the health and safety that we have here in British Columbia. We do everything really good here in British Columbia. But we do need to be aware that we have to have that balance between the resources extraction, whether it's natural gas and the water challenges, or forest practices, or mining. We need to make sure that we're working with people in the area, working with local governments, working with regional districts, working with communities, working with First Nation partners to make sure that there is a path forward that everybody can have. We all want the same thing. We want to make sure there's a paycheck coming in, make sure that we can feed our families, make sure that we can have a comfortable life. And there is a path forward. And that is a role of the MLA. That is the role of building those relationships and bringing that leadership to the table to make sure that we can all move forward and do what's best for the economy here in the North Peace. And I think we have a bright economy in the future here.
Thanks, Dan. Jordan?
Thank you. I think when it comes to our resource sector and approaching it in an environmentally sustainable way is very important, and I agree. We do it in one of the best ways compared to any other country on the planet. But one of the best ways that we can actually help our climate is being able to send our products to other countries, like our LNG, and have them cut back on their pollution that they're currently going through. When you look at China and how many coal plants that they're using, we we can only choke ourselves so much to be able to live. And right now, I think we're doing everything in a very sustainable way. That if we keep on working with companies when there are drought scenarios and we have to look at water preservation, we can work with the oil companies at trying to produce and use their produced water sources and get them to reuse that rather than pulling out of our lakes and rivers. We can allow farmers and give them incentives to be able to expand their dugouts and have more water resources. We need to harness our natural resources so then we can use that revenue and make it so then we're not taxed into poverty. We have to harness our natural resources, and I think we can do it in a sustainable way where we can partner with communities and other groups to be able to make that happen. So many of our resources were held up when it comes to the permitting process, and we're committed to try and have one permit, one project to be able to expedite these projects. So we're not waiting on, right now we're looking at several mines that are waiting on the final approval in their permitting process, and we're looking at trying to make that happen so then we can bolster our revenues of our communities and our way of life.
Jordan, I got to stop you.
Thank
Okay, thank you, Jordan. We got 1 minute, Dan.
We don't have to take the 1 minute.
You don't have to take the 1 minute. That's
I
choice.
think we're pretty close. I am.
Are you guys okay? Let's continue on. Okay, next question. This is going to choice again. Jordan, are you ready for this one in regards to Indigenous relations? Yes or no? First choice? You want to go first or second?
I'll go first.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay. Considering the importance of reconciliation and building stronger relationships with Indigenous communities in and around Fort St. John, what specific actions will you take to address historical injustices, improve collaboration with local First Nations, and support Indigenous-led initiatives in areas such as healthcare, education, and land stewardship?
I believe it's very important that we work with our First Nations communities. Our party is committed to trying to make that happen with a framework that works for our province and within our own country. And right now we're seeing a lot of effects of DRIPA and UNDRIP that the framework wasn't made for our areas, the way that our resource sector is. And I believe that it can be done in a better way. And along with our party and John Rustad, that he wants to focus on economic reconciliations with First Nations. And that doesn't mean that we're trying to cut them out. It means that we're trying to include them, but we have to focus on being able to actually work with projects in a manner that benefits everybody in British Columbia. And we need to have it so then our natural resources can still be utilized in a sustainable manner. So we're committed to working with First Nations. I agree with what First Nations have gone through in the past as being an atrocity, and we need to reconcile. But I personally believe that the government has to take the primary role in that reconciliation and the routes moving forward. And right now, on local government level, I've sat on the leaders' table. I've listened to First Nations. I've communicated with First Nations. And I think that we can move forward in a beneficial way and form partnerships in different manners to try and have our communities thrive together.
Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you.
Dan?
Yeah, absolutely critical. I've met with every First Nation band in this riding. I have a great relationship with all of them. And I think that is probably the foundation is relationships, building relationships and building trust before we can move forward. The Ellis Ross, I was a big fan of Ellis Ross, has supported Ellis Ross on his leadership campaign. I hosted Ellis Ross up here a number of times, and we went out and spoke with leaders of the different nations. And that was when he was first starting to talk about this whole economic reconciliation. And he is the perfect example of economic reconciliation when he talks about his band, the Haisla Nation, and what they've done to bring that entire nation out of poverty and bringing them into all a band that has money, things that happened. And we need to make sure that, and we've talked about a lot of the mental health and addiction issues, we need to be able to find that path forward to support our nations, supporting all of our people, so that we can move forward as neighbors in our communities and do what's best for all of us, our children here, the children of our nations, so that we have a bright future ahead.
Thank you, Dan. Now, Jordan, you have a choice. Do you want a 1 minute rebuttal?
Yes, please.
Yes, okay.
I also want to focus that our party is committed to economic reconciliation. It's not only the key to self-determination, but also the foundation for the health and prosperity of Indigenous communities across our province. True reconciliation is achieved through direct engagement, respect for governance structures, and empowering Indigenous communities to be able to control their economic future. Our policies will focus on fostering partnerships between First Nations and the private sector, unlocking opportunities in industries such as natural resources management, fisheries, forestry, and clean energy. I think the LNG is a perfect example, and when you mentioned Ellis Ross, he is an amazing advocate for seeing how we can progress forward and really make BC a powerhouse, and it benefit everyone within it.
Thank you, Jordan. Dan.
One of the things that there we are. One of the things that hasn't been talked about is DRIPA and how that plays out. And it was really interesting. The John Rustad has changed his opinion. I know initially his approach was to be ripping up DRIPA. I can only assume that industry had a conversation with him and told him that if you want to kill industry in 5 minutes, rip up DRIPA. DRIPA is a good guiding document that does not supersede in Section 35 of the Constitution is where all of these things already are, how we need to work with First Nations. And it is part of us all moving forward under some framework that can do the best for all of our communities. I think it's pretty sad that it's got to the point. I think it's pretty sad that it's got to the point where there's more welding rod in that bridge than there probably is original metal. I've worked with the Taylor Council. I've worked within local governments. I've talked to the government. I bring this up at every opportunity I get during the budget debates, during question period a number of times, and we have moved the bar. Now, have we got a commitment from government that, yes, they're going to put shovels in the ground? Not yet. But we've moved the government into doing a bunch of engineering's been done, a bunch of the geotechnical has been done. I know there's been conversations with the communities, with the community of Taylor to see what that looks like. But we need to be looking at the whole corridor from the top of the South Taylor Hill to the top of the North Taylor Hill and treating that as how do we improve the flow of people through that entire corridor. I know that the new Taylor Council in the last few years has agreed to look at a 4-lane through the community. So now that we can move toward a 4-lane bridge, because there's no way you're going to have a 4-lane into a 2-lane and back out to a 4-lane. You're not going to do that bottleneck. So I'm happy with the work that I've done over the past couple of years, moving that conversation forward, getting the Taylor Bridge at top of mind. There is not a minister or not a person in the BC legislature, I will guarantee, that does not understand the importance of the Taylor Bridge. I have been writing the governor of Alaska, the premier of Yukon, because this bridge is not just important for us and the movement of goods, but this is the movement of people up in through northern British Columbia to the Yukon, up into Alaska. And I will not stop fighting until I see shovels in the ground, and I think we can do that by 2026.
Thank you, Dan. Jordan?
Thank you. We've definitely seen a lot of promises over the years from previous politicians, and our party, when we formed government, we're focused on building the infrastructure across the whole province. Taylor Bridge is one of those. We're also committed to doing a bridge across the Okanagan Lake. We're looking at a new bridge, rebuild the Red Bridge in Kamloops. We're looking at upgrading Highway 19 in Nanaimo. that we need to work on our infrastructure across the whole province. That with Site C coming to a wrap, we need to put people back to work, and our infrastructure is a great thing to be able to make that happen. And our party is committed to being able to focus on this that we hear from other parties. That's one of the things that I love about with John when he talks. He knows the North. He's driven over that bridge. He's a premier, or future possible premier, that welds. He's seen the whole underneath the bridge, that it needs to be replaced, and we're committed to be able to make that happen. We need to unlock the potential of this province, and with that, we have to upgrade our infrastructure. And right now, in a lot of areas, our infrastructure is lacking in major ways. So we're committed to being able to work on major corridors. We're willing to work on major projects. We're also willing to work with local governments on how to help their infrastructure systems.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan. You want a minute, Dan?
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. Let's go.
I mean, this is a hot topic. This
Absolutely.
is a really important topic.
Use it wisely.
To me, and you know, this is one thing. You know, I'm sure some of you might have seen the platform that did come out from John Rustad. The Taylor Bridge is pretty low in a list of long bridges like the Kelowna Bridge. There's bridges and infrastructure throughout the Lower Mainland. We've seen this list before. We've seen this list from the NDP. We've even seen it from the former BC Liberal government. We need a person who can advocate, who knows how to apply pressure to government agencies, knows how to bring the resource sector, knows how to work with other jurisdictions such as the Yukon and Alaska to be applying pressure to the government of British Columbia to know that this Taylor Bridge is important. It doesn't need to be number 5 or 6 on the list. It needs to be number 1 on the list, and I'm not going to stop until that happens.
Okay, Jordan.
I'd like to add that it actually was number 1 on the list that John mentioned when he came up here and visited our region 2 times over. And when it comes to key infrastructure, normally when it comes to accomplishing that, that's parties that do that, not just an independent looking by themselves. We need to have a team to be able to establish these key changes in our government. And the Conservative Party is focused on being able to do that. I believe that we have the chance to be able to form a majority government. And when we do that, we can move all of these projects forward in a fast way. And we are more than willing to make that happen with the team that we have. We're also looking at the bottlenecks and the congestion points. And we have to look at our existing infrastructure, not just new projects, and look at our road systems and how we can enhance the safety of our citizens moving across the province.
Thanks, Jordan. Okay. Next question, Jordan. Obviously, you have choice here in regards to social and cultural issues.
I'll go second.
You go second? Dan, you okay with that? Okay. Well, let me just scratch off yours. Let's go there. Okay.
Do I get an extra minute?
No, well, no. Nice try, but no. With Fort St. John welcoming a growing number of immigrants and newcomers, what policies will you implement to ensure their successful integration into the community, including access to employment, language training, culturally appropriate services, while fostering social cohesion? Okay, Dan.
So, you know, some of you might know here that just recently I was one of the founders of the Northeast Immigrant Society. You know, this is important. We have seen, I'm born and raised here in Fort St. John. I've seen our community grow into this incredibly cultural place, which I'm proud to call home. You know, I can actually go for something other than, you know, pizza or a regular restaurant. Now I can go to a good Indian restaurant downtown. And I think that's important for society. We also need to be looking at the impact that immigrants bring to our communities. If we look at the provincial nominee program, a program that is there to help bring people that we need to fill a hole in our employment requirements, this is absolutely critical. if we're going to be moving forward as a community, making sure that we're filling the gaps that we need. We need to be supporting them. And again, going back to the Northeast Immigrant Society, that was initially brought in to deal with the war refugees from the Ukraine. But it is a society that was created to help teach language, to help people with forms, to help integrate people into our community, to make friends and to connect with others. And, you know, this is something I think we need to actually look to our neighbors in Alberta for. Alberta has a much stronger PNP program. There's an example in where Grand Prairie actually has a say in looking at how many people that they need and working with the point system. And it is quite complex. But BC has failed when it comes to supporting immigrants and bringing people in that we need to be supporting into our communities, and certainly helping support many business people in our community that require and need to have the support from many of these immigrants that are helping support us up here.
Thank you, Dan. Jordan.
It's interesting that you mention Alberta, because that's a Conservative Party there that we work with on a regular basis. I don't think our system's broken when it comes to, my father is from England, my mother's from New Zealand. They're both immigrants that came to this country for a better way of life. There are things that can definitely be improved, especially nowadays when you look at the immigration struggles that we have and trying to incorporate people into our communities and trying to have everybody feel like they're Canadian and a British Columbian. We want to have inclusive societies and groups. I've worked with several of the associations and societies in town here. I've seen some of the things that they struggle with, and some of they'd like to have more access to grants, and we want to be able to work with that, and I want to be able to advocate to be able to make that happen. I'm committed to that our party is going to work with the federal government on immigration, and we've just seen an endorsement from that level as well with their Conservative Party. So it should be interesting to see what happens in the next year. But I think there's key things that we have to highlight is that we need skilled people in Canada. And we need to make sure that we bring people over that have skills in a beneficial manner. We need approximately 1 million tradespeople across Canada. That's not necessarily something that we can just fill on our own with the baby boomers. We have to focus on immigration and bolstering that there are amazing people that can come from all around the world that want to call Canada and BC their home. And I would like to make that happen. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan. Dan, we've got 1 minute.
Yeah, and you know, obviously, again, we need to find ways that we can support. One of the things, and we've worked with lots of newcomers to Fort St. John in my office over the last 7 years, people struggling, again, to get through the PNP program, people struggling to attain their PR. Again, we need immigration in this country. This country is made up of immigration. It doesn't matter what country you've come from. That is the foundation of Canada. And, you know, we have some great programs in our schools. The settlement worker program, I think that we need to look at how can we support our school district. You know, a lot of these families, they're coming with young kids and they don't have the supports that they need. Again, that was why we saw a big hole in Fort St. John when we started the Northeast Immigrant Society. We saw that they needed supports, and you know, we were stepping up to make sure that we filled that need. Again, immigration policy, good immigration policy, is extremely important.
Thank you, Dan. Jordan, you ready for a minute rebuttal?
Yes, please.
Sure.
Okay. I want to focus on people coming here and the skills and trades that they have, or the professions that they have, that we do not need to see doctors and engineers working as laborers. We need to be able to work with other countries and accreditations to be able to actually have skilled people contribute to our society. We need to be able to partner with other provinces, so then we're not just robbing resources from them or robbing people from them in a manner where it leaves shortages in other areas. So my party is committed to be able to work with other provinces and be able to work with the federal government to bolster our immigration process and allow our diverse communities to thrive. Just in local government alone, as Area B Director, it's amazing the diversity that you see in the different cultures and how people can blend together. And it's, I think it really is a great representation of the country that we live in.
Dan, thank you.
Thanks.
Sorry, Jordan. Let me get this straight. So, choice. The next subject in regards to questions, parents' rights in public education. Dan, you can either choose to go first or second on this one.
I'll go first.
You go first? Okay. Given the controversy surrounding the implementation of SOGI, the inclusive education in British Columbia, how will you ensure the schools in Peace River North will provide a safe and inclusive environment for all students while respecting the concerns of the parents and the broader community?
Thanks very much for that question, and it's little secret that the word SOGI has become a buzzword. And, you know, as a school teacher myself, as the former critic for education, and as a parent of 2 children, one's just going into his high school years and one's just graduated, you know, this hits home for me. I don't believe there is room for any bullying in our schools. And I think that we can look at look at 2 pieces, and it was kind of in the start of your question. More parental involvement. We need to encourage our parents to be involved, working with their teachers, attending PAC meetings, working with the school districts, getting involved. Right now, we have parents that are just completely disengaged from the school system and really don't understand fully what is going on. And I know that right now. I'm just as guilty sometimes of being that parent, like, I'm just too busy to deal with my kids in school. But we need to ensure that parents are being involved. We also need to make sure age appropriateness. There are things that don't need to be taught in grade 2. Age appropriateness is absolutely critical. And those are the things that I am going to be pushing forward.
Thank you, Dan. Jordan.
Thank you. I think we need to focus on parents' choice that was brought up, that parents have the right to determine how and where their children will be educated. I believe that we need to go back and focus on the basics, that our children do not need to have other things thrown at them to confuse them further, especially with all the distractions of life that we have. My party is committed to getting rid of SOGI because I believe that it's developed into something different, and it was originally created to be an anti-bullying tool to have as a resource for teachers. And it's changed in some areas. Some areas aren't really affected, but others we've seen that the ideology does not need to be system. I think some of the schools that have come out like Freedom Thinkers, they really do focus on the basics, and it was one of the schools that was rated highest in the Northeast. And I think it's beneficial to be able to look at a scenario like that and be able to assess it. When it comes to bullying, nobody should be bullied, not just one group.
Thank you, Jordan. Dan, you want a 1 minute?
Yeah, and again, I think the important pieces are, well, one, I do agree that we need to get back to basics. We do need to obviously focus on reading, writing, math, science, and technology. But we can't forget there are populations out there that do get bullied. And I fully agree that, again, SOGI has probably become something that it wasn't initially intended. And I've seen that under the NDP government. SOGI has been in place for 10 years now. It's only been in the last few years that we've seen how the NDP have let things go where it's become something that it hasn't been. I still go back. I will never sit down, and I will always stand up for children if they're being bullied. I will not back down until we see bully-free in our schools. SOGI was brought in because of a human rights code. The school districts have to. There has to be that language in place. Maybe it's not called SOGI down the road, but the language is required to be there by the human rights. The British Columbia government just brought that in. So what it looks like going forward, my key thing is age appropriateness, and parent involvement. I will always go back to those. If we do that, I think things will be good.
Thank you, Dan. Jordan?
Yeah, I'll take a rebuttal on that.
Yes.
So I think when it comes to the structure of SOGI and what it's become, it does need to be removed. We need to focus back onto the basics, but then we also, if we're going to have an anti-bullying program, it has to be an anti-bullying program. Right now, if a kid is getting picked on and he stands up for himself, the victim is getting persecuted as well as the bully. We're not actually stopping the bullies. We need to focus on anti-bullying in a realistic manner. I believe that all children are different, and we need to harness and empower that. And there are a lot of different resources, and I'm not saying we need to get rid of those resources, but we can bring in a better framework than what it has become.
Jordan?
We need to get back to the point where,
No, that's okay.
we need to get back to the point where we need to teach kids how to learn and not tell them what to learn, because they have to figure out on their own what they want to do in life.
Thank you, Jordan. Okay, this is specific to each candidate. So Dan, you're going to go first in regards to this. In regards to the specific candidacy, it's party versus independent. So for Dan, as an independent candidate, without the backing of a political party, how do you believe your approach to governance, decision-making will differ from party-affiliated candidates? And what unique advantages do you bring to the table in representing the specific needs of Fort St. John?
Yeah, great question, and obviously I've been asked that a lot. And I think we need to look at what's happened in the last few years. There has been parliamentary procedures have changed in the provincial legislature over the last 7 years. And really a lot of it was all aimed at giving more power to independents to have voice. And as a party member, as one example, I used to get 1 or 2 questions a year, 1 question every session roughly. And it was dictated by the party, and you would get a question and a rebuttal. Now as independents, you get a question every 2 weeks. So that's now 14 a year. So just in regards to how question period, or what question period looks like, it's a huge increase just in those questions. An opportunity to directly hold people accountable, asking questions that are very much focused on the region. And I think that is the other piece. I'm not bound by a party. I'm not bound by a party to say X, Y, or Z, or stick with this theme, or you can't do that. I can speak on behalf of the constituents of Peace River North, whether it's an issue at Upper Pine or something out of Presbyterian or Fort Nelson or here in Fort St. John. I can specifically advocate directly without having to go through filters in the party and bring it onto the floor of the legislature. The privileges of an MLA are exactly to an MLA, not a party. It's the individual MLA. Every MLA that walks into the British Columbia legislature has the same privilege as everywhere else. So there are some great benefits, and again, a lot of the updating of the provincial legislature has made it better. I get all the debate times, I can debate budgets, introduce bills. In fact, they're going to be allowing private members' bills on the floor in the coming year as a new standing order. So things have really come a long way in regards to independence, and that is the power. I'm responsible to you. It is direct democracy, direct voting through me, your MLA, directly to you.
Thank you, Dan. So specific to you, Jordan, as a candidate with the backing of a political party, how do you believe your approach to governance and decision-making will differ from non-party affiliated candidates? Hold on, I got to flip the page. And what unique advantages do you bring to the table in representing the specific needs of Fort St. John?
So I think the Conservative Party of BC stands a very good chance of forming government. I think if you had the choice between having a cabinet minister of forestry or agriculture up here or an independent, I'm pretty sure you'd choose a cabinet minister. And the resources that come with a party being in place, the power to be able to make change and how quickly you can make a change, we need that in BC. We need to make these corrections. And when it comes to representing my local area, I have always done that. even in the 2 years that I've been in local government, I have stood by what my constituents want, even if it doesn't always land easy on me. I've turned around and I said to John before I became a candidate, I will not be whipped. I represent this region first and foremost. And John reiterated that fact, that he wants his candidates to represent their regions first and foremost and the party second. I think that commitment is true. I really think that our region can flourish. I believe that I have shown and I am committed to standing fast by what my constituents want, and that I have always followed up with when they have concerns. I believe that even on the smaller issues, I have always been there to answer my phone. Even if it might be like on my farm and cows are mooing in the background, I'm always answering my phone. I am committed to this region. I love this area, and I want to see it flourish. And I want to grow old here with my wife on my farm.
Thank you, Jordan. Okay. 1 minute?
Yeah.
Okay, Dan.
Well, thanks, and I do got to rebuke one thing here, and you know, being whipped or being told what to do by the party. I mean, it's already happening. I mean, we had a conversation on the phone a little while ago, and you know, on the phone call, you told me you had to get permission to debate. I mean, you're not even the MLA yet, and you're already being told what to do by the party, or having to ask permission to speak to media. Well, I don't have to go through those. I am an independent, and I can make the choice. The media I'm going to talk to, which I'm always open to all media. I will never turn down an interview to media. I will always have conversations. So those are things I think that are really different. Now, I think the important thing that I didn't mention was it is looking like it's going to be very close in the legislature. If there's 4 or 5 independent candidates that are sitting in the legislature on a near hung parliament or a tie, talk about the keys to the legislature, getting the Taylor Bridge, because that's conditional upon us, you know, whether we're talking with John Rustad and joining the Conservatives, getting the better healthcare we need up here. Well, that's conditional on me supporting that. Those are the conversations that we can have. And I see Bob's here tonight. You know, we had an independent in 2017 run against me. You know, and I say this honestly, if he had won, things might have been quite different because it was a tie then. So
Dan.
Don't underestimate the power of an independent.
Thank you, Dan. Absolutely. So, once again, guys, in regards to the crowd, don't get me wrong, I appreciate the applause. Let's allow them to speak and let them have that opportunity. And we're going to give you that opportunity to ask questions here in just a little bit. But if you don't mind, please. Jordan.
I just want to say that when it comes to communicating with a party, it's a team process. Making sure that you do things properly, that it works, so then it doesn't affect your other candidates and team members. That is part of what I do. I'm sitting here debating because I believe it is valuable to democracy, and I believe it's valuable that the constituents hear this. My opponent has been whipped for the past 7 years in a party. He has gone along with that for the 7 years. When we hear that he has previously ran slamming independents when it comes to previous elections, turning around and saying, don't split the vote. I find that hypocritical, especially when you look at the independents that have run in the past. They really represented independent values. Thank you.
Jordan, thank you. Just don't get me wrong here. Okay, Jordan, Dan, you get to go next on the first one. Choice, of course, this is in regards to federal and provincial relations. Choice, you're good? Okay, with the ongoing federal changes to firearm regulations, some of the residents of Fort St. John have expressed concerns about the impact of legal gun ownership and potential overreach into provincial rights. How will you advocate for responsible firearm ownership while addressing the concern about federal intrusion into our provincial jurisdiction?
Yeah, thanks for the question. And you know, I've raised with a family with firearms. I you know, hunting, fishing. I own firearms. I was actually quite annoyed. I did get my restricted, and then it was a little late. I didn't get under the federal regulations change. I believe in responsible gun ownership, all right? We've seen a lot of this is federal. There are provincial pieces to it. But I believe that responsible gun owners are just that. We should not be painting responsible gun owners as the criminals. Let's go after the criminals. Let's treat the criminals as criminals, and let responsible gun owners carry on. One of the big challenges that I have heard, though, is in British Columbia, we have one provincial firearms inspector, just one, which has now created a whole backlog in regards to inspections, making sure that there is a place to take your firearm and safely do target practice and shoot it. We also need to be working with RCMP. We need to be working in our justice system isn't doing justice. And we've seen that change in the last 7 years since the NDP have come in. We've seen David Eby's catch and release. We need to get back to holding the criminals accountable. And this is, I think, if we can get back to holding criminals accountable, the rest of us that are law-abiding people can carry on about our things that we need to do.
Thank you, Dan. Jordan?
Can you repeat the question,
Absolutely.
please?
With the ongoing federal changes to firearm regulations, some of the residents of Fort St. John have expressed concerns about the impact of legal gun ownership and the potential overreach into the provincial rights. How will you advocate for responsible firearm ownership while addressing the concerns about federal intrusion into the provincial jurisdiction?
I will work hand in hand with our MP, Bob Zimmer. I've seen firsthand that he fights for our rights when it comes to be able to use firearms in a beneficial manner. That on my farm, it's a tool. I really think it's ludicrous that our current government is approaching things the way that they are when it comes to legal gun owners. A lot of the framework is through the federal government, and we, in my perspective, Alberta, when the Conservative Party got in there, they chose to appoint their own chief firearms officer, and it allows a level of protection and security for the province to be able to have a say over how the federal government is going to look at legal gun owners' firearms. I think it's in the north. I think it's vital that we be able to have our firearms, and that right now the federal government, the current federal government, the way that they're pursuing it, they'll be happy if they just take away all of our guns. But I don't want to see that happen for hunters. I don't want to see that happen for trappers. I will advocate in every which way possible to make sure that we actually have the tools that we need, especially when we follow all the rules and we make sure that we have the training. We use them in a beneficial manner. I will advocate and work with Bob in any which way possible going forward, and I look forward to when the Conservatives get in on a federal level as well.
Thank you, Jordan. Dan, would you like to have a 1 minute rebuttal?
Yeah, well, just maybe to reiterate a couple things. I've been a member of the North Peace Riding Gun Club now for a few years, and had the opportunity to take my kids out there, had the opportunity to do some trap shooting. Again, I think these are really important, especially us that live up here in the north. Firearms are different for us. We're around them more than many other people. I think it goes back to the very simple fact we need to be looking at the criminals. The criminals are the issue. It's not the law-abiding gun owner. And I'm absolutely looking forward to changes, with the federal government change next year, seeing things get back to more reasonable. Again, taking that approach, looking at the responsible gun owner. And I think we need to be keeping track of responsible and the criminal, and dealing with the criminal as a criminal, and not treating all of us as criminals because we own firearms.
Thank you, Dan. Jordan?
I think they're just happy to take away all of our guns. I think they're just using the criminals as an excuse to do it. We need a change in government. We need a government that will look at things in a practical manner with common sense and what is beneficial. That not every region relies on hunting. But when you look at the Lower Mainland, that it's true when it comes to the crime and the trafficking that happens in some areas, the federal government needs to go after that in a major way, and we need to empower to go after the criminals that are smuggling the prohibited weapons and the weapons that are committing the murders. That we need to empower our police enforcement to be able to cut back on the criminal activity and the spread of drugs across our communities.
Thank you, Jordan.
Thanks.
Before I read the last question, I want to make sure that Todd and Victor are ready in regards to, they're going to be within the crowd here, working both sides and allowing everybody here that attended the opportunity to speak and ask questions. We'll get into kind of the rules and rounds that. I'm going to remind you guys again. But here's our last question for the evening that's been prepared, and this is once again prepared by both the group that organized it, and we received a bunch of emails in regards to questions, and this is where this comes from. So that's the last question of the night in regards to prepared, and we're going to go to the crowd, Dan. So, Jordan, you're up if your choice or not. First choice in regards to ICBC.
Hit me.
Hit you. Okay, good. I've been waiting for this one as well. No, not with a car, though. Okay. ICBC. Many residents in Fort St. John and across BC have expressed frustration with how ICBC handles claims, particularly for plaintiffs seeking fair compensation. What reforms or alternatives would you propose to improve transparency, fairness in ICBC claims process, and do you support greater competition in the auto insurance market? Jordan, you got 2 minutes.
We're going to get rid of the no fault when it comes to major claims. That we believe that the people that are hurt in a serious manner deserve to be able to get a lawyer to advocate for them, especially if they can't do it themselves. The ICBC is another corporation of the government that is bloated and has red tape, and we need to look at other options. That maybe there are private options that will fit better into that scenario. Myself personally, my wife is handicapped. She was in a motor vehicle accident and was with a logging truck, and she was paralyzed. She got her movement back, but when I met her, that was after 3 years, and she really struggled to be able to advocate for herself. When I met her, we ended up finding a lawyer, and we pushed to be able to get that representation, but without having that, I'd hate to see where she would be stuck.
Thank you, Jordan. Dan.
Yeah, we've heard so many issues around ICBC, and I agree. Probably everyone here has their own horror story that they've dealt with ICBC. The no fault, when the government brought in no fault, we voted against no fault. We knew it was not going to work. We've seen a similar model fail within WorkSafe BC as far as no fault goes. We need to be there to support people that are hurt and injuries, and those people need, not just a number attached to an injury that's kind of just randomly out there. People need the right to be able to advocate, to get a lawyer, and to get the compensation that they deserve for the injury that they have. I know a lot of people say, get rid of ICBC, get rid of ICBC. I wouldn't want to go too hastily on that. I think we need to look at other options. What are options out there in Canada? I know Saskatchewan does have a private-public insurance model. There is competition in that as well. We always want to be, careful when you're just saying, hey, we just need to get rid of that. Whether it's, let's get rid of SOGI, let's get rid of ICBC, we don't want to be throwing out the baby with the bathwater. We want to make sure that what are good things in there that we can keep while we get rid of and make improvements over here. And I think ICBC, there are improvements that can be made. We absolutely need to be looking at opportunities for competition, making sure that there are opportunities to bring those insurance rates down for you. The ability to get a claim processed fast. there's no such thing as fast in ICBC and getting a claim done. We need to make sure that we are improving this. This right now, it's a government service for you, but again, it's a typical government service that isn't for you. We need to make sure that we're looking at what are some best practices on insurance and the best way that we can deliver insurance that works for every British Columbia, that works for us up here in northeastern British Columbia.
Thank you, Dan. You got a 1 minute, Jordan, rebuttal.
Thank you. I just want to say that if our government forms if we form a majority government, the Conservative Party of BC is dedicated to look at the Crown corporations and how they can best serve us, not necessarily just generate revenue for the government, and then also explore different avenues for cutting that red tape so then they do serve us better. The bureaucracy that's within those corporations, we need to look at that as well, and that can only happen by a party that is in power with a majority government. To be able to make those changes that we need, it's substantial, and I truly believe that we can get rid of the no fault, and it'll benefit people that are in the same scenario as my wife. And it'll actually allow them so they can care for themselves in the future and not have to be homeless on the streets.
Thank you, Jordan. So that completes our actually prepared questions. And where I'm going here is now we're going to open it up to the crowd. Sorry. Did we get rebuttals? Oh, geez, Lord,
I get a rebuttal.
I jumped ahead. Sorry, Dan.
Well, I'm not going to take too much of
No, thank you, Dan.
too much of it.
I got excited.
I just do want to reiterate as well. Again, we have ICBC. We have looked at ways, we need to look at ways to improve the insurance here in British Columbia. But I think it's critical that we need to look at how can we make it better? How can we look at other jurisdictions? And again, I go back to Saskatchewan. And I encourage you to look at the Saskatchewan model, which seems to be quite successful as far as a Canadian type insurance model to look at. I'm absolutely open to having those discussions, looking at other jurisdictions and finding out the best insurance model that we can have that'll work for British Columbians. And again, very specifically, that will work for us up here in the North Peace. And I think that's really important. Thanks.
Dan, thank you. And thank you. Okay, let me start again. This is when we open it up to the crowd, and we have the opportunity for questions from the crowd. But here's a reminder, guys, in regards to how we're going to do this. For the crowd, we'll allow 1 minute. The 1 minute will be up on the big screen, and it'll count down for you to ask your questions. We'll be monitoring this time, and if need be, we will remove or shut off the microphone. This is to be, once again, to be respectful and allow each candidate the opportunity to respond. And we're going to allow the same time for responses, 2 minutes each and a 1 minute rebuttal. And we'll go, we're working off both sides, and just as you raise your arm, we have both Vic and Todd here for anybody from the crowd to ask a question. So, Todd, Vic?
Hold it. You don't trust me with it? Okay. I'm going to ask a question. So, Mr. Davies, you say you stand up for families. Did you see the families on the side of the highway during the Freedom Convoy? Millions of Canadian families stood on the highway in the freezing cold, waving their flags, hoping that the governments would see them, listen to them. Why didn't you vote to support the Freedom Convoy? The only MLA in all of BC to support the Freedom Convoy was John Rustad. Why didn't you?
Okay, well, thanks for the question, and I'm going to answer it in two pieces. When the convoy happened here, the truckers' convoy happened here, I was in the convoy. I went out to Charlie Lake, spoke with people out there. Again, that was my job as an MLA, to go out and talk to constituents and talk to people. I was out there when that happened. But going to your question, and I'm going to try and answer this really quickly. I didn't participate in that vote. I abstained from that vote, and very specifically for the reason that it was John Rustad who was playing a game. That motion, and it was a statement motion, it had no bind or nothing. We were about to debate for 1 hour healthcare issues. We were going to be debating the importance of healthcare in British Columbia, the importance of getting good healthcare here in Fort St. John, the importance of getting people with knee operations that are waiting for 2 years on a wait list, the importance on being able to get to appointments in Vancouver and not being dropped off in Vancouver and try and get yourself forward. John pulled a trick. And he used all of our Monday morning statements have to be brought forward by complete agreements in the party, or it brings in a previous motion. And he derailed that entire thing and brought up the trucker convoy motion that the NDP actually had brought forward as a controversial debate point, to which we actually spoke against that. But I was not going to play. It was a political game that Mr. Rustad did to only get the legislature to have this gotcha moment. I wasn't going to play that game. I think healthcare is more important than a vote that has no meaning on that in the legislature here in British Columbia. That's why I did what I did. I wasn't going to have any of it. I actually abstained from that vote because it was a game.
Thank you, Dan. Jordan, are you more than welcome to respond to that?
I just want to clarify I wasn't in the legislature to be able to vote on that. But if I did, I would vote that people have the right to protest. No matter what the cause, people have the freedom to express how they're feeling.
Agreed.
John, I want to make this very clear that when we talk about people getting whipped and representing their constituents, that John got kicked out of his previous party because he disagreed and he represented what his constituents believed. Then when it came to in legislature, and we saw there was a lot of people that were unhappy with what was going on. It doesn't matter what side of the fence you sit on, but if people are protesting, it means that they have concerns, and we need to listen from all levels of government. If we shut down communication, we're shutting down people, and it just causes more problems. I love the fact that John voted in favor that people could protest. I really do believe that we have that right, and we should support it. I think COVID, what was horrible about it, it was so divisive. The way that families got ripped apart, marriages got split up. You see the havoc it created across our province. This is what happens when a mandate is issued and it's not done in the right manner. It hasn't been done in a long time, and we see the repercussions of how that's happened. We're seeing it in so many different ways. We see it with stresses on our healthcare system. We see it with the fact that our infrastructure system with truck drivers and how they were affected. We need to work in a manner where we can properly communicate with everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan. Yeah, absolutely. We can 1 minute rebuttal.
Yeah, and I think it's important. I'm not against assembly, freedom of expression. I mean, these are enshrined in our Charter of Rights and Freedoms that we can do this. My issue was that John strictly played a game. He derailed important discussions that were happening on the healthcare issues to bring up basically a vote that had no force and effect, a vote that didn't do anything other than derail important conversations that were happening about healthcare. This is why I refused to participate. It was a game. The whole vote was a game, and I've said that a number of times in the past. This was an NDP motion that was brought forward to play trickery or whatever you want to call it. The important stuff that we debate in the legislature at that time was healthcare, and John derailed those important discussions, and I wasn't going to participate in John's game, and I think that is what's important.
Thank you, Dan. Jordan?
I think it actually has a tremendous effect that when people are expressing concerns, we need to listen as government. We need to listen to our constituents, and if something like this does get brought forward, we need to take it seriously, especially when there are thousands, tens of thousands of people that might feel like they aren't getting represented. And as a leader, I will always represent my constituents. If it gets me kicked out of a party, well, then I guess I'll deal with that. But one way or another, I will represent my constituents. Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan. Do we have a question from the right side, Todd?
I heard from both parties tonight that they want basic educational rights brought back to schools. Reading, writing, numeracy, and technology. What I didn't hear from either candidate is how your party or your views will help to support, first of all, mental health, social and emotional learning in schools, the poverty crisis in schools. I haven't heard how you would effectively support food security in the schools. I haven't heard either person say how affordability in schools. So that's part of, I would like a response to that. I would also like to hear a response to something that was on BC TV today from the UBC Stigma and Resilience Among Vulnerable Youth Centre report out of UBC that states, after a 10-year study, that SOGI 123 resources, not curriculum, you're both stating that it's a curriculum, it's not, has decreased bullying and sexual orientation for all students, including heterosexual individuals.
I'm going to have to stop you there. Sorry. Jordan, you're up first here. You ready?
Oh, yeah. Well, that was a lot in that question. Thank you very much for the question. Even though we may not get to every concern, they're all definitely important concerns that you brought up. Mental health is huge. The stresses and effect of COVID and what that did to our children and the isolation that happened. I believe that we need to have those supports in place. Right now in Fort St. John, we have 2 psychiatrists and not a single one that is meant for youth. We need to bring in these supports to be able to help our youth and be able to work with the different struggles that may be going on in their households or how best to move forward in their scenarios. It's very complex. When it comes to poverty and affordability, I believe that we're seeing the effects of that across the board. And we really need to rein in our cost of living. And by doing that, our party is committed to getting rid of the carbon tax, which affects affordability on every level. And right now, I think that'll be one of the biggest benefits that we can do. And our party is also looking at trying to reduce taxes in other ways as well. When it comes to food security, I've seen some of the food security programs that happen through the school systems, and I think we need to promote them, especially when it comes to how we can incorporate our local farmers into those systems as well, and the knowledge that can be handed down to let children know about where their food actually comes from.
Jordan, I'm going to stop you. That's okay. Dan?
Yeah, thanks. Again, a lot to unpack, and I don't think I said it was either curriculum or otherwise. I know it is it's a resource, and I do understand that. And we talked a lot about the basics in education, and I 100% support teachers. In fact, I know we need more teachers. We need to be encouraging young people to become a teacher. I got my training locally here, went through the ACO program at Northern Lights College. Programs like that where we train locally and keep people locally, just like the nursing program. I think those are absolutely critical, and I will do everything I can to support those and to grow those. Undoubtedly, we are absolutely short, and we need to be making sure that we have resources in place to get school psychologists in. We need more counselors. We need more EAs in our classrooms to support learning. These are things that, again, that government needs to be looking at. How do we encourage? What can we put, especially up here in the north? The problem is exacerbated up here when we're trying to get these professionals, especially psychologists, because the whole province is short on psychologists. So we need to be looking at ways to attract people up here, whether that's through tuition, grants and such, to bring people up here to the north. Again, fully support and understand those critical shortage. One of the biggest complaints I had, and when I was in the school system, was diagnosing kids early who have learning challenges, getting that early intervention. And if you can't get that early enough, it's too late in grade 7 or grade 8 to be talking about that issue. So I 100% do support that we get the resources into our classroom. We invest in education. The foundation of any successful society around the world is based in a good education system. And I will continue to support our education system, support our teachers and the people that work to make our children better in this world.
Thank you, Dan. Jordan, you got a 1-minute rebuttal.
I think when it comes to the follow-up on that, I think Dan's brought up some amazing items that especially when it comes to his history. I think one of the largest things that we really do have to promote is listening to the parents and the issues that are going on, and trying to promote the communication between the children that are in the schools and the parents. That sometimes there's a disconnect there. And when I talk about bringing things back to basics and removing ideologies, I believe that it allows that communication to happen easier. I really do think that by enhancing our way of life when it comes to affordability, that we can make it so then parents can actually try and spend more time with their children rather than trying to work themselves to death, to be able to afford to live. That I think that we need to be able to try and make that family life as a priority as well.
Thank you, Jordan. Dan.
And I agree again. A lot. I'm sure all of us here want good education for children. I don't think anyone sits in this room and says no, we don't. But I think that's a lot where leadership comes into play. I have a great relationship with our school district, a good relationship with with the BCTF. We need to be working with these partners across the province to make sure that we can find solutions. Let's empower people to find out how is it best that we bring psychologists up here. Let's talk to psychologists. Let's talk and bring in principals and find out how we can best do that. And I think that is a part, one of my strengths is I have those relationships. I've had that experience bringing people together and working in the school system. The other thing I guess, obviously is really important is around the poverty issue. We need to be looking at breakfast programs. Nothing worse than having a young person trying to learn in the morning that's on an empty stomach. So we need to find other ways that we can support our students as well.
Thank you, Dan. Okay, we're open for another question. Vic?
I've heard a lot of things tonight, but in the school district, in the schools, what age do you think they should be teaching sex education? I mean, I know at one time it was grade 5, grade 6, but now they're starting as young as kindergarten, grade 1. If kids hold hands, they call that a perversion, they call that sexual. And they have people actually out in the play yards to see whether these little kids will hold hands. Now, what will that teach these children when they grow up later on in life? There's lots more questions I want to ask, but this is one that really bothers me.
Okay, Dan, you're up for this one to start. Thank you, Dan. Thank you.
I'm not sure holding hands as a grade 1er is probably a good judge of anything other than friendship. But I do get back, I think, to the relevance of the question is what age is appropriate. And I go back to my point, having that parental involvement, having parents involved in education, in their education, having parents communicating, with the teachers, with the principals, getting involved in the PAC, getting involved, with the school trustees. I believe sex ed is still taught in I think it starts in grade 4 area or something like that. But it goes back to age appropriateness. We had a challenge up in Fort Nelson early this summer, I believe, or was it late in the fall? I can't remember, in the last year. There were some really inappropriate things that was brought into a grade, I think it was a grade 7 or a grade 8 class. Again, there's a lot of here on judgment. And I think this is where that discussion needs to happen, involving our parents, parents getting involved. They know what's right for their child. A parent knows what's right for their child. So the parents need to be having these conversations, again, with the schools before, this is not a blanket thing across the province. Parent involvement is critical to make sure that we're doing the right things for our children.
Thank you, Dan. Jordan, you can rebuttal on that?
I believe parents have the right, I reiterate again, parents have the right to determine how and where their children will be educated. We're seeing materials that come into our school system that some parents disagree with where they're being brought in and the age appropriate, where that lies. And I think that communication has to be in place, that the parents need to know what's being taught to their children and what materials are being used. Fort Nelson was a great example that some of the cards that were being handed out to kids that were descriptions of different things, some of those, even I didn't know what they were, yet they were teaching these to kids. This is another example of how our children are just being confused more than what is needed. We need to go back and focus on their primary education and look at some of the materials that I've seen. I've got 4 books that have been in the system that have been brought to my attention that are some of them are more explicit, some of them I could see being age appropriate. There is another one that it talked about pedophilia and a father grooming his 2 daughters. A book like that should never be as a library resource in primary or secondary education. I could see that being later on as an adult, being able to look at those items, but if something like that comes around and parents have concerns, we need to listen to parents and try and cater that into the system so then their parents are having their children get the education that they would like to see them have. And it not necessarily be forced into different alternatives where they have to try and pay for homeschooling or private schools to get the education that they'd like. Our basic education system should give us a standard across the board.
Thank you, Jordan. Dan. Oh.
Did I rebut?
No, you did a rebuttal.
Yeah.
Boy, that was fun. Okay, so Todd,
I'll
where are we
talk
at?
more if you
No,
want.
no, I just sit down. We'll get to the next question.
Dan, you've already stated the Taylor Bridge and the highway through here is a massive piece of infrastructure for truckers, gets trucks everywhere. Everybody in your constituency depends on trucks. We can all admit that. You yourself are as a trucker. Everybody in this room, probably 50% or more, have a truck license. You use the medical thing as an excuse to abstain from the vote. As far as I can tell, medical has gone completely down the drain since that vote. So whatever happened that day seems insignificant. You abstained from a vote condemning the truckers. Jordan Rustad was the only one who did not condemn the truckers. Are you ashamed of yourself yet, as we were of you at that point?
I'll just go back to the question at hand. Yes, our medical system is in shambles. That is why we were having the debate. We were bringing up points, and the points that we were bringing up, that I was bringing up, was dealing with people that were shipped out from Fort St. John in Vancouver getting treatment and being kicked out the door in Vancouver with no way home. That was a relevant conversation that needed to happen. The trucker vote, again, it was a statement. There was no teeth to it. It was just a statement. There was no debate. It was a vote that came out as a result of John playing a game. I'm a truck driver. I've been a truck driver for 26 years. For 26 years, I absolutely support truckers, 100%. I support the freedom of expression. I support people assembling, peaceful assembly. But that's not what this vote was. This was John playing a game, period. I needed to be debating medical, and that was the issue that all of us here are really worried about.
Jordan?
I believe a vote's a vote. It's important no matter what you're voting on. It doesn't matter if the next vote is about healthcare, or it's about crime, whether or not it's about poverty and drugs. They're all important votes. So I represent my constituents, and I'll vote. I think that when that vote happened, there was a very clear statement that came from the legislature that they didn't care. And we have to have communication in place that every sector is important. Truckers are vital. If they have concerns, we need to communicate and address what the concerns are. And like I said, I'll vote with what my constituents want me to.
Thank you, Jordan. Dan, you want a rebuttal to that? You're good? Jordan, you're good? Okay. Let's go to one more from the floor. We got here on the left. Thank you, Vic.
You'll have to hold that because I need to flip a page. Okay. Dan, do you know what I'm holding up in my hand?
I can't see it.
Oh, let me refresh your memory. You were on the Standing Committee for Safer Drugs on the Streets. Your name's right here on page 4. And tonight you said that you were against the drugs on the street. So how would you explain that, please? Are you for it? Or are you against it? Or because it's election time and we want to hear you're against it, then you're going to say you're against it?
Well, I think, first of all, the document you're referring to was a committee that I was on, was the Select Standing Committee on Health, looking at the opioid epidemic in British Columbia. Now, we were very clear, and if you look in the recommendations in that document, it was very clear how we wanted to lay out the next steps on dealing with the opioid crisis. And I'm sorry, I'm not sure if you're denying it or not, there is an opioid crisis in British Columbia. People are dying every single day, 7 people a day. 7 families are impacted every single day by an overdose death. And the recommendations in that was, we need education. We need prevention. We need to make sure that there's a transition between people that are on drugs to get them into addictions treatment, to get them from addictions treatment into the care that they need, the long-term care. We did not agree to any of that unless all of those pieces were put in place. The NDP came out after that and then decriminalized drugs. We have been against that since the day that the NDP have brought that up. It's in the records. We have debated every single time that we were opposed to the decriminalization of drugs. Every single debate since the NDP have brought it up. This document here, again, it had some, and it's online, you can look it up. You can see what the recommendations were. It was to get people well again. And the NDP botched it, unfortunately, because all they brought in was legalization and safe supply. Well, that's not going to work. That's keeping people on drugs. We need the prevention, the education. We also need the recovery, and that's what that document's about.
Thank you, Dan. Jordan, would you like to respond to that?
Well, I'm not sure what the document is or the standing committee of what they were looking at that time. But when it comes to safe supply, I think the Portugal structure that they were looking at, it has failed. It has completely failed our system. It's allowed fentanyl in every avenue of our society. It's allowed it so then it can coat children's candy. It's failed. We need a different approach. We need to ban these hardcore drugs from our streets. We need to make it so then people have the resources to get better, which we are committed to do as a party. We need to make sure that people have the mental health resources to be able to get better as well. What blows my mind is that the current government brought this structure in without even having the systems in place that Portugal tried. And they knew that it probably wasn't going to go over very well, but they still tried it. And even when you look at Portugal right now with their current systems in place, with the way that fentanyl has been, the way that fentanyl has come into their country, it's throwing them for a loop. So I think right now we need to go back to the system of where we were working before to make it so then people can get the treatment that they need. The fentanyl isn't lacing children's candies. And we can provide treatment for the people that are struggling. And go after actually capturing the criminals and the traffickers that are promoting this. They're the ones killing innocent people. And we need to stop this revolving door of the system that we currently have. Thanks.
Thank you, Jordan. Dan, you got an offer? Yeah, 1 minute rebuttal for sure.
Yeah, just really quickly as well, just to wrap up. And you know, in one of my points on my card here that I really do believe in is jail time for drug crime. We need to be finding these big drug dealers that are bringing in the C-cans of fentanyl and be holding them accountable. The big drug dealers that are out there are not being held accountable by our justice system. They're in and out, or they're not even caught. We need to make sure that we are giving the police the tools that they need to track down these drug dealers, get these gangs off the street. We need to also be enabling or changing our justice system so that people can be held accountable. And I think that is a huge piece that we need as we move forward looking at part of the drug problem that we have. I just really want to touch one last thing. The federal government actually put in some boundaries that had to happen before the provincial government did the decriminalization. And the provincial government, the NDP, ignored that. So we need to get back to some common sense policies here.
Thank you, Dan. Jordan?
So to expand on the safe, trying to actually fight drug overdoses with more drugs, it doesn't make sense. There's no common sense, especially when people will get the safe supply and sell it, and then they'll end up buying their own. In no way is fentanyl a safe drug for anybody to administer on their own. In our medical system, it's a percentage of a percentage on a patch, and it's highly regulated by the doctors and the pharmacies in our healthcare system. We do not need it out on our streets. We need to ban it. We need to make sure that our police can do their jobs and the enforcement can do their jobs. And John Rustad is committed to stopping these traffickers and trying to put control measures in place in our borders and going after the major criminals. Thank you.
You know, when we first set this out, we had a timeline between 7 and 9. We're after 9. So here, in respect to time, and just to allow, hold on. In regards to respect to time, and we still have time for closing remarks, we'll allow 2 more questions. So Dot, it's up to you. Okay, that's fair.
Okay, this is concerning firearms. The federal government has a program, a large ban on firearms, and they're trying to institute a program to legally confiscate those firearms. I'd like to know what each of your positions are and what you and your governments are going to do to push back for British Columbians against this.
So Jordan, you're up.
Our party is committed to trying to stand up for its citizens' rights. And when it comes to if we get in and form government, where we look at exploring the opportunity of appointing our own chief firearms officer. And John has expressed that we will not use our funds and resources to take away legally owned gun. To take away the rights of the legal gun owners and try and remove their firearms. I believe that that's an infringing point on our rights, especially when all we have done is follow the rules and the training that's being put in place.
Thank you, Jordan. Dan?
Yeah, well, I go back to what I said earlier as well. I think we need to stop focusing on law-abiding gun owners. Let's focus on the criminals. Let's focus on the ones that are creating all the issues with firearms in this province. I am all for responsible firearm ownership. I think Canada's done very well at that. All the bans and the changes that we're seeing, those are just knee-jerk responses that we're seeing across the board. I think the province should be staying out of the firearms jurisdiction, quite frankly. That's federal government. Leave it up to the federal government, to do their thing. And I think that we'll see. The Conservative government next year bring a lot of positive changes to the firearm regulations in Canada.
Jordan, you want your 1 minute for rebuttal?
No, I'm good.
Okay, Dan? Okay. Vic, you got one from over on the left side, please?
I know you're both passionate about this community, so are you able to tell us what groups and organizations you have been involved with and in what capacity?
Dan, you're up.
Oh, that's a long list. I'm born and raised here. I'll take a line that my grandfather told me, and lots of you probably know my grandfather, Frank Davies. He was a pillar in this community, and he always said, you will only get out of your community what you're willing to put into your community. And I've lived by those words. I have become a community leader in regards to working with the SPCA. I've sat on the library board in the past. I've worked with the cadet program for 25 years here in Fort St. John. I started the cadet program in Fort Nelson. I'm a Rotarian. I'm a member of the Chamber of Commerce. These are programs, starting the Northeast Immigrant Society. These are all things that make our communities great. And one of the things that worries me right now is the lack of volunteerism that we're seeing right now. And we need to get into promoting and encouraging people to get involved in building our communities. Because I truly believe when we lose our volunteers, we're going to lose a really important piece of that fabric of our communities that make them all vibrant. I've been absolutely proud of all the things that I have done over the years, not even in political life, just again, building community, bringing people together, to make sure that our kids have things to do, to make sure that, people in our communities are proud to say, Fort St. John is my home, Fort Nelson is my home, Taylor's my home. These are important things to do, and I support all community organizations. I've written hundreds of letters over the last 7 years as the MLA, supporting our nonprofit sectors. We need to get out there and support them. And I encourage everyone here tonight, get involved before it's too late. We're going to lose that fabric of our community.
Thank you, Dan. Jordan?
Well, I have to say that when I moved up here over 20 years ago, one of the main things that I really wanted to do was be able to own a farm. And I loved the farming community around this region, and I've been active with that community ever since. I've helped run the Farmers Market Association in Fort St. John. I've met some amazing people being involved in that. It also helps establish food security within our region and highlight infrastructure of how we can utilize our own products and resources and different ways to volunteer. And right now, it was brought up when it comes to volunteering. We're seeing a shift in volunteers between the older generation and the younger generation trying to come in and support. And through my local role or local government role as the Area B director, I really have tried to help with a lot of the associations and societies, especially like the Fall Fair, for example, trying to be able to alleviate some of the pressures that they have to deal with and some of the changes that happen with different codes. And I think it's very important to participate in as many societies and associations as possible, because they need help. There's a lot of them that fold every week, and we need to try and support them. And being new into politics, I've had the chance where stepping away from my farm a bit in a bigger way, being able to be more involved. And I really look forward that if I get voted in as MLA, I can have a lot more of these experiences with different groups. So if you get out and vote on October 19th, I'd love it if I can make that happen.
Thank you, Jordan. I don't think we need a rebuttal on volunteering, do we? I actually have one more question. I'm sorry, we're going to have this as our last question from the crowd tonight, Todd, if that's okay. And then we're going to go right into closing statements. Is that okay?
Yes, I do have an important question. My question is that we're tired of paying high taxes in British Columbia. What's the best way to lower taxes so we can live comfortably and happy and everything like that? That's my question.
So that question's right to you, Jordan, to start with, please.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear all of that.
Can we
you
repeat the question?
Please?
My concern is that we're living in BC and we're paying high taxes than the other provinces. So what's the best way to lower taxes so we can live comfortably?
Jordan, did you get it?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that's a very important question. I just wanted to make sure I heard you correctly. I think the biggest thing that we can do is get rid of the carbon tax. When you look at, it's not just a tax. The way that it was created, it actually causes inflation. You can have products where it can actually have that tax applied to it 5 to 10 times. And that inflationary tool, we need to get rid of it. We also need to get our record debts, provincially and federally, under control. And as Conservatives, we're fiscally responsible to make that happen. It's how we survive. It's how I look at my life on my farm and how I've kept it going. But when you look at it, trying to keep things going, it's tough, and any little bit can help. So the Conservative government, the Conservative Party of BC, and I'll push that we try and alleviate those extra taxes, and then we'll also look at those items that will cause that inflation to happen. And when we bring down those inflationary items, it'll make everything else come down as well. So you'll see the cost of housing come down, all of the building materials will come down. We just need to ensure that those prices come down when that happens.
Thank you, Jordan. Dan?
And one really interesting thing, and I'm just going to go on what he said about we're Conservatives and we're good at budgets. I'm really surprised that voting starts tomorrow. Mr. Rustad has come out with a multi-billion-dollar budget that has not been costed yet, or how it's going to be done. So that is one thing that really does concern me as far as where we're going next. The billions and billions of dollars of handouts and nowhere to figure it out. Reducing taxes, I agree, the carbon tax, not a good thing. But we need to get back to balanced budgets in British Columbia. We need to get back to balancing the books. $50 billion debt up to 2017. From 2017, and that's 143 years since British Columbia has been a province, $50 billion to 2017. 2017 to now, in 7 short years, we've added another $60 billion. We've over doubled the debt in BC, and that, unfortunately, is our present government, the NDP. We need to get our deficit spending. We're doing $8 billion deficit spending this year. We've been deficit spending since COVID, and there's no plan to get out. There's no plan to get out. And we need to make sure that we are growing the economy. That's number one. If we have a booming resource sector, forestry, we have a LNG sector, a natural gas sector that's going, we have our mining going. If we can bring all of these things forward, that is going to stop the government from reaching into your pocket, because they will have revenue coming in from these sectors. You will be working, you will be contributing to the economy. Unfortunately, we have not seen that for 7 years. We need to get back on track, growing the economy and getting money back in your pocket.
Thank you, Dan. I think that's worthy of a 1-minute rebuttal. Jordan?
I think he just answered the question about John Rostad being able to fund these items, is that we do need to enhance our resource sector, and we need to get it thriving again. We need to bring in the fresh revenue streams, so then we can actually afford to be able to pay for the certain things like the Taylor Bridge. These are very important to, right now, even for our communities, when you look at, if we do not enhance our resource sector, our communities are going to die. We have to do this for rural BC, and John Rustad knows that. He also knows it's very easy for somebody else to go and break something. It takes a lot more to be able to fix it. So trying to pinpoint an exact budget, That'll come, don't you worry.
Dan?
Well, you know, again, I just go back to, you know, we need to grow the economy. We had a robust economy prior to the NDP here. Great plans for, you know, the LNG facilities. And I think there is positive things coming in our future. We've got LNG Canada that's come online with an expansion already. You know, the Haisla, we're talking about the Haisla and the success that they have on Cedar LNG that's been approved. Just north of Prince Rupert, we have the Kitsalem LNG facility that's been approved. Wood fiber. These are good things for the economy. These are good paying jobs for British Columbians. We need to continue to support those. You know, with the leadership that I have in bringing people together, working with people, you know, as the founder of FSJ for LNG, we were doing truck rallies, trying to bring to the attention of the provincial government the importance of an LNG industry in BC. And we've actually moved it. We are now seeing successes, and I think that those are going to start producing jobs. We just need to keep on it, making sure government recognizes where the money comes from, and that's from up here.
Thank you, Dan. Well, we started this night with a coin toss. And who went first in the introductions also goes first in the closing statements. Jordan, that's you. So the concluding question, and this was sent by one of our local residents. How would electing you to ensure the needs of our riding are met, and what qualifies you to best to be able to deliver, particularly if there is a minority government? Jordan, you're first. And do you want me to repeat that? Or are you okay?
I'm doing good.
Okay.
Thanks.
You bet.
So in a scenario where it's a minority government, well, I really wish that isn't the case, because right now in this scenario that we're currently experiencing, our way of life cannot sustain this. And I cannot reiterate that more, that we need a change. And the Conservative Party of BC can make that change happen. I will advocate on every level possible. I've done that at a local level. As the Area B director, we communicate on a regular basis with other communities and municipalities, and then we have a working relationship with the provincial government on top of that. I've been able to participate and explore that scenario. It's been a learning curve as I got into it, and it's only been about 2 years. I believe that I can adapt to provincial politics in a similar manner, no matter what's thrown at me. And I believe that I can approach that in a way that best represents my constituents. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jordan. Dan?
Yeah, I've stated a number of reasons why independence is power right now. And again, a lot of that's been the enhancement and the change within the provincial legislature in how things are done. I have a proven track record over the last 7 years. Have we got everything we need? Absolutely not. Nor has any government. You know, we're one riding of 93 in this next election. One riding. The biggest thing here is making sure that you have a representative that understands the issues that pertain to us here in the North. I have that experience. I have worked in industry. I've been in government. I have relationships with people across this entire region, which I'm very proud of. And those are really important when it comes to representing this region. Now, the other important part is 85% of the work is actually as a constituent MLA. It's working with individuals. It's working with individuals, getting them to navigate through the system. It's representing nonprofit groups. It's meeting with industry up here and talking about this, you know, how can we do better in the North? It's meeting with First Nations. It's meeting with cultural groups. It's participating in the community. That is the majority of what an MLA does. And as in the provincial scale, on a parliament that looks like it's going to be a tie, talk about the power of a couple of independents to get stuff done. We have the power to basically ask. We need that Taylor Bridge. We will support you, John Rustad, but we need some guarantees. We need things before we can move forward. And the one commitment that I absolutely have, I will not do anything after the October 19th election unless it is in the benefit of Peace River North. That is my guarantee to you.
Thank you, Dan. So it's 9:22. First of all, I just wanted to remind everybody in the room, advanced voting starts tomorrow. Take the time to vote. None of this is possible without the people that stepped up to make this happen. And I wanted to say thank you to people in the back. So bear with me here. Skylar, Ben, Ryan, from both Eagle Vision and Systems Rentals, thank you so much for making this happen. For promoting this event, and once again, making sure that the community is aware of what we're going on. Adam at Moose FM, thank you very much, Adam. And don't get me wrong, I just met her here a couple days ago, but I don't mind the stare and the glare. Colleen from Frontier Law, thank you very much for keeping me in line. And Brian, where's Brian? From the Lido Theater. I got to admit, Brian came to us just about a month ago in conversation about how we can make this happen. And as far as the Petroleum Association here in Fort St. John stepping up to make this happen, Brian, thank you for asking for us to do this. We're super proud to be here and be part of this community. On behalf of the Fort St. John Petroleum Association, we're super happy this happened. This conversation and this opportunity for both Dan and Jordan to speak, and the questions that came from the crowd, thank you very much. Thank you for coming. Other than that, guys, thank you very much. This concludes our evening.
Oh, not closing?
Do we get it closed?
Well, I thought that was our closing statement.
That was just a question.
Holy crap, okay, so let's do it. I thought this was it. See, now I told Colleen before I started I was going to mess this up. So that was it. Well, a couple other times. Yes. So 2 minutes closing, is that fair?
3 minutes, please.
3 minutes closing. So
Okay.
Jordan, thank you. That's
Thank
your
you.
closing. I apologize. I'm going to thank you very much, Jordan. 3 minutes closing.
I want to thank Curtis and the Petroleum Association as well as Brian. It's amazing to be able to utilize a venue like this. I want to start just by the fact that I may be new to politics, but I don't think you'll find anybody that works harder than I do. When I turn around and say that I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And I think I've demonstrated that to a lot of people already. And I look forward to being able to do that more. I want to leave you with a quote published today by former Premier Gordon Campbell of the BC Liberals. There is only one choice if you are looking for change, the BC Conservatives. If our votes go to the alternate candidates, the NDP will win. Split vote means the NDP wins. That is clear from our history. I am asking you tonight to vote for BC's only true Conservative Party and its candidate, myself, to be able to represent this region in the strongest role possible. And I would love it if I could put my name forward to be able to be the Ag Minister or Forestry Minister. I think right now, when you look at experience, our current Ag Minister has an arts degree. I would love it if I could escort her out of the office and bring some experience to government. Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan.
So thanks very much again. Thank you, Curtis and the Petroleum Association. Thanks to Brian and the Lido. This has been a great event tonight. And as I've said throughout the night, tonight is about experienced Conservative leadership, something that I can bring to the table. My years of experience that I've worked throughout the region. Doesn't matter the region, doesn't matter the size of issue. It is important that everyone's heard and that voice is brought forward. It's about bringing these voices to Victoria and finding local solutions for local problems. It is something that I've stated. I have not just walked into politics. I've lived here. I've volunteered here. I've raised my family here. It is something that I'm absolutely very proud of. I started this campaign under a different banner, and I think everybody knows the story. Like many of you, though, I did believe in what that party stood for. Free enterprise, small government, lower taxes, and all those other things that we talk about so often. But when the party folded even before the writ dropped, my decision was very clear. I was going to continue to run because that is what I'd promised everyone, and I still have a lot of work to do. As far as the vote split, there is no vote split here in Peace River North. 10% roughly is where the NDP come in. This is a race on the right. This is a race about sending the best Conservative with the best voice and the most leadership to Victoria to represent each and every one of you across this entire riding. You know, we've seen it before over and over again, political parties, and I was partially guilty on that, although I was never in government. You get parties that promise the world, but you never see the deliverables. This isn't about those big giant promises. This is about me working for each and every one of you in here, working for every single community, bringing the issues that matter, getting someone to their specialist appointment in Vancouver and getting them home again, connecting with resource workers and the resource industry and getting jobs coming up here to the north, making sure that we're working with the CANFORs and the LPs, making sure that we can find a path forward in regards to forest policy. What I'm offering is different. I'm standing here as an independent that can and will make a difference in the provincial legislature. I have no party lines to worry about. I can individually represent your voice in the legislature. And again, I call it direct democracy. Your voice is my voice in the provincial legislature. There's a big long list, and I do encourage you to look at the card that I have on each of your tables. Those are things that I will continue to work on. And again, I can almost cross one off. I've worked very closely with the District of Hudson's Hope, and it sounds like we're close to getting a deal to get them drinking water. I can do the same work as working with the District of Hudson's Hope. I can do that same work working with the City of Fort St. John, Taylor, the Regional District, the city or the town of Fort Nelson. Put Dan Davies to work for you. Vote. I encourage you to vote. That is the most important part of this whole democratic process. Please vote. Starting tomorrow, get out, make sure you vote, October 19th. Put Dan Davies back to work for you in the provincial legislature. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Dan. So, Dan, Jordan, and everybody here, I really appreciate your patience. We talked about structure and organize, and this wouldn't happen without you guys showing up tonight. So thank you so much once again.
Yeah.
Let's vote tomorrow. Let's get started. Thank you for coming. Have a safe trip home tonight, and have a great night. Thank you. You bet. Thank you.
Holy cow.
That was good.
Oh, I was so nervous.
This is a much bigger group than the 50 in Fort Nelson.
Yeah.
Holy smokes. That was good. Well done. Well done.
Yeah. You're doing the moose on Friday?
I think so, yeah. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Thank you so much.